analyzing the results of Tucson's primary and looking ahead to the November general.
I think Democrats are leaning towards women and people of color.
Plus, hearing from the winner of the Democratic primary for Tucson mayor.
It's about being a fierce fighter for the right thing.
And how the U of A plans to carry on the conversation about free speech on campus.
We do want to support students in being able to have difficult conversations.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. Voters in Tucson can shift their attention to the general election. This week, the city tallied ballots in its all-male primary. The three-way race between Democratic candidates for mayor topped the ticket. City Councilwoman Regina Romero easily won with about 50% of the vote. To unpack the results and help us look ahead to November's general, we turn to the Tucson Sentinel's Dylan Smith, the Arizona Daily Star's Sarah Garrett-Gasson, and Tucson Local Media's Jim Ninsel. My thanks to the three of you for being here. Jim, let's begin with you. Regina Romero really won this race very easily.
She did. She ran away with a 12-point margin over Steve Farley. I think a lot of that had to do with, number one, I think Democrats are leaning towards women and people of color, all things being equal, and there wasn't a lot of difference between where these candidates stood on a lot of issues. So I think people were looking at secondary characteristics. Number two, she had more money, and her allies had more money to spend on getting the word out about why you should vote for Regina Romero. And finally, I think that she just had a great ground game that figured out which voters to target and how to get them to the polls.
She also has name recognition, though. She's been on the council for a long time now.
I think, name recognition certainly plays a role. We saw that, Randy Dorman didn't have the same level of name recognition and, came in a pretty distant third. Plenty of people have heard of Steve Farley. Plenty of people in Tucson have cast ballots for Steve Farley, just like they have for Regina Romero. So I don't think it all comes down just to that, but certainly, as Jim was saying, I think a lot of it was the ground game, the ability of what is, sometimes referred to as the Grijalva machine. It's just people who know how to get their voters to the polls time and time again.
Sarah, though, the Arizona Daily Star endorsed Regina and Sammy in Ward 1, and neither one of those, Randy, excuse me, and neither one of those candidates, that didn't do much for them. Why not?
Well, I think part of the issue that we had in this election, this primary, is a really good issue, and that we had a lot of really good candidates. So the Arizona Daily Star editorial board, we did discuss it at length. It was very close. It was very, there was a lot of moving parts to different people's positions not being very far apart from each other. So what we did is we looked at the job of the mayor and then evaluated the candidates against that. And we came up with deciding that Randy Dorman, we thought in this particular job, in this particular election, was probably best suited for the mayor, and Sammy Hamid on Ward 1. But it wasn't, sometimes in elections, we all know, there's like a clearly way better candidate than another candidate. And that wasn't the case in this election. We had good candidates to choose from, and when it came down to it, I don't think voters really could make a bad choice.
Dylan, what comes of the general election when Ed Ackerley, an independent, faces off against Regina?
I think he's going to pick up a little bit of support from especially some folks in the business community and Republicans who are adamantly opposed to Regina Romero being the mayor. I don't know if that's going to be anywhere near enough support. It's hard to run as an independent. You need to have a political party and all the the parts, the volunteers, the access to data that comes along with that, and it's going to be a pretty big lift. And there's also going to be a Green Party candidate on that ballot in November, Mike Cease. So there'll be somebody running basically to Regina Romero's left, and especially on a number of issues, and that'll help position her a little bit, as more of a centrist choice. Although some people would certainly, I guess, disagree with that characterization of her.
Yeah, I think the business community, and I heard this a lot from various people out there, that there was this belief that Regina Romero was was not friendly to business. This is something Regina was well aware of. She has worked to counter that. You know, when you talk to her, she's always talking about economic development, tries to steer the conversation in that direction. She had Cody Ritchie, the Republican insurance company owner, who was a co-chair of her campaign. That led to some controversy during the campaign because he's given money to Trump, and they were trying to link Regina to Trump, which is a pretty ridiculous accusation to make. But that aside, I think you know, the last time we had a crowded Democratic primary in 1999 in this town, Molly McCassin came out the winner of that. She was also perceived as very left-wing, and Bob Walkup, the Republican, was able to squeak by and win that race, and it was pretty unexpected. That said, Walkup, as Dylan pointed out, had the support of the Republican Party, and that mechanism and that support is not going to be there for Ackerley, so he's going to have a harder time succeeding than
in that race, Walkup had a lot of very early support. He started building his campaign, you know, a couple years before he ran, and had really lined up, you know, a pretty good machine behind him. I think as people, some of the folks some Republicans especially, start to learn a little bit more about what Ed Ackerley is proposing, they may not be so excited. He's come out very recently in favor of making sunshine buses free for everyone, extending light rail all over the community. You know, these are not sort of traditional business community talking points that he's coming out with. And he's been a Democrat until this year, his whole life. He registered as a Democrat in 1977 and switched to no party just this January.
And so pretty savvy political move to not get pushed off the ballot in the Democratic primary. I do think that there will be an outpouring for Regina specifically because it will be seen as, for a lot of people, a vote against Trump. It's very much voting for Regina Romero, Latina woman, for mayor in Tucson, I think is a big statement for a lot of folks, and that will energize some people who may not have come out to vote for the Tucson mayor otherwise. I really do think that who she is, in addition to her progressive policies and viewpoints, I think will be a greater push for some folks in the general election.
And I think it's safe to say that at this point, Democrats would crawl over choice fields in order to vote for Democrats at the ballot box.
Regina says she's going to take Ed Ackerley seriously, as she should. Do we anticipate a contentious race as we approach November?
We'll see just how much traction Ackerley's campaign gets. We just saw a pretty contentious primary against people who generally agree with each other. Perhaps having a little bit more room for policy disagreements between those two would mean a less personal race. They might talk a little bit more about the issues.
Okay, and a big topic that we'll be discussing here shortly after the break, the sanctuary city. Not long after election night in Tucson, we sat down with the winner of the Democratic primary for mayor. It was our second discussion with Councilwoman Regina Romero about her vision for the city. This time we honed in on her campaign strategy in the run-up to the general and lessons learned from a hard-fought primary.
We're not going to change. This is the message that I've worked hard for the last 12 years on the city council, and I'm ready to go on to the general with talking about the quality of life issues that I've been talking about throughout the primary, how we fund our roads, how we continue funding our parks, our public safety. We will continue talking about economic development issues, the effects of climate change in Tucson and our community, and how we boldly act on climate as a community. And so those are the issues that brought us to this point, and we're going to continue having that discussion with the general election voters.
I know we've talked about this before. Coming up on the ballot will be an initiative about sanctuary cities, highly contentious, very controversial. If you're elected mayor, how do you handle the legal challenges that will likely ensue given that Arizona would be in the spotlight?
Well, I have said that as the initiative is written, I do not support it because of the concerns that we have with the state legislature and the governor coming after our state shared revenue. Saying that, I believe that the voters have a choice in November of making a decision about what they want with this initiative. If the voters pass this initiative, then I will defend the will of the voters. First, because I've always maintained that the state legislature and the governor have been trying to micromanage the city of Tucson for at least 10 years or more. And since the city of Tucson and its residents are we're Democratic voters, we're a Democratic city, we feel that the state legislature should give us autonomy as a city, as a chartered city, to make the decisions that we feel Tucson residents believe in. I wish we would have been able to have a discussion with those people that wrote the Sanctuary City Initiative, because 60% of what that initiative calls for, we already do in the city of Tucson.
The privilege that you all have given me to be able to be the Democratic nominee here in the city of Tucson has been the privilege of my life.
After the polls closed Tuesday, Romero says her campaign expected a longer night waiting for answers. Instead, cheers erupted moments after the city posted the results, showing her with a clear lead over her opponents, Randy Dorman and Steve Farley.
I'm willing and wanting to unify the Democratic Party, because when we are solidly united, we're most powerful.
Romero says both candidates called to offer their support. She believes her campaign's efforts going door to reach undecided voters paid off. In doing so, Romero says she realized how they're affected by rhetoric from Washington.
When I hit the doors, I heard people saying, yes, I'm going to vote for mayor, but I am so concerned about what's happening in D.C. I have faith that Tucsonans want someone to take a stand against racist rhetoric, against the hate and division that Trump is spewing out. And I know that you don't have to be a Democrat to know that. I know that independents and Republicans even don't accept that or tolerate that behavior.
This sounds like a very emotional topic for you. I mean, this is something you feel strongly about. How are you envisioning the next few months, maintaining that balance of, yes, I'm a candidate for mayor, I feel strongly, but I've got to be careful because you don't want to say the wrong thing to create the wrong attention in this community?
I think people want to see authenticity in their elected officials. It's no time to think about what are the political consequences to me when there are these types of issues that are happening. It's about taking the right stand. It's about being a fierce fighter for the right thing. And so, yes, absolutely, there are going to be people that are against what I have to say. But I've been truthful with the voters and the residents of Tucson. They know exactly where I stand on these issues. And that is the reason why they've elected me as their Democratic nominee. People are ready to have someone that will stand up for their principles and their ethic and fight for what is right without stopping to think, should I do this because it's not going to be good for me?
Okay, Regina, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next week, we hear from independent mayoral candidate Ed Ackerley and discuss his strategy for winning in November. This week, the University of Arizona welcomed back students for a new school year, and it's expected to revive an issue raised last spring about free speech and inclusion. You'll remember the U of A made national headlines when students protested the presence of Border Patrol agents on campus. It triggered a series of events, including a campus conversation just weeks before summer break. Now we're learning how administrators plan to steer the discussion. First, a look back at how the situation unfolded, beginning with new video of the incident that sparked this debate.
Because the Border Patrol is here, and as a student of this campus, I have the right to feel safe.
The body camera footage shows what U of A police encountered in the hallways last March. The department blurred out some faces.
I could be undocumented, I could be whoever. I could walk out of class, see these and be triggered.
A few students shouting in protest during a presentation given by 2 Border Patrol agents to a criminal justice club.
Murder Patrol! Murder Patrol!
Over the phone, officers consulted the dean of students and a police lieutenant who recommended they ask the agents to cut their visit short.
Murder Patrol!
Make a way for them. So sorry for those guys.
Eventually, UAPD cited 3 students for the disruption, charges that the Pima County Attorney's Office later dismissed. The student supporters also called on the university to ban federal immigration officers from campus,
What are the plans to bring those voices to the table?
leading to a wider discussion along with assurances from UA President Bobby Robbins that administrators would take their concerns seriously.
This is a major issue, and we're going to have to sit down and work out a way how we coexist.
The university's next steps were outlined for us this week by Chief Compliance Officer Selena Ramirez. Tell me what a campus conversation really entails. It was a subject that came up late last spring.
This year, we're going to do something a little bit different. We want to give students an opportunity to get to know one another, to have conversations. You know, more and more we hear that people feel isolated. They're, attached to their devices. And it's such an important part of the college experience to meet someone from across the country or across the world who grew up completely different from you. So we want to give students that opportunity to be in conversations about meaningful values and meaningful topics.
It's not to say these sorts of venues didn't exist before.
Sure, absolutely. They're all over the place on a college campus, but we want to bring that intentionality so that we can let students know we also want to hear from you. So one piece of it is allowing students to connect with one another, but we will have employees who are facilitators for the trainings who will collect the themes that are being discussed and share them with the administration so that the administration knows what are students concerned about, what are employees concerned about, and how can we make this the best place possible for all of them.
And so one event that sort of kicks off this year would be in October.
That's right. So we have our opening event on October 16th. It's at 1 p.m. at the Student Union in the Sonora Room. So we've invited a speaker to campus. Her name is Aurora Chang, and she's a professor at Loyola University and the director of their higher education program. So she's an expert in how to support students on college campuses, and specifically immigrant students. She herself is formerly undocumented. She came to this country with her family when she was very young and later became a citizen. And so immigration won't be the topic of the conversation. It will really be about how we can connect with one another through our personal stories. So it will be interactive. There will be tables with facilitators and students and other community members. It's open to anyone. We'll have that opportunity to share their stories and start those conversations.
Are events like this expected to be open to the public?
Some will be and some won't. The opening speaker is open to the public. We are very interested in partnering with the community on some conversations. Some will just be for students, particularly in the residences, to keep that focus there. But we're open to partnering with the community.
Now, this issue became relevant late last spring when Border Patrol agents were on campus and confronted by students. Did the university learn something from that experience after being thrust into the spotlight?
Absolutely. It was definitely a learning experience, and the university wants to hear from students. And so there have been a lot of discussions over the summer, and we're trying to keep those lines of communication open, both with students and Customs and Border Protection, so that we can be as transparent as we can and hopefully make arrangements that will work well for everyone.
There's a real balance that needs to take place when it's a public university and students are expressing themselves in a public place. Is that part of what they'll learn at campus conversations?
I hope that students can learn, depending on the setting, how they want to express themselves based on their goals, right? One day they'll be in workplaces or in all sorts of other settings, and we want them to be thoughtful about how can I be effective in this conversation. You know, at the same time, we know a lot of students are interested in engaging in protest, and we want to be supportive of free speech in that way. But ultimately, I think we want to help students make the best decisions about that.
What do you want people to understand about this? I mean, what took place last spring, I think, thrust the U of A into a national spotlight. maybe left people feeling uncomfortable in some areas about whether or not to come to campus. But is the message that the university is aware of what took place and trying to learn something from that?
Absolutely. The university is listening, and this summer we had a lot of conversations about that with community members, students, employees, and we're being responsive. We are, the entire senior leadership team is going through a diversity and inclusion training this semester. UAPD is going to have an advisory board from campus, so there's that bridge with the campus community. And we have a website with a lot more information. It's campusconversations.arizona.edu. So there's FAQs there and a lot of information about how we are being responsive in this situation.
These campus conversations, would you say that they're a reflection of what's taking place in our conversations right now where we disagree with each other?
Sure. The university is not unaffected by everything that's happening in our country, and we do want to support students in being able to have difficult conversations. I think that's a really important part of our mission.
What do you hope comes of all this?
I hope that students feel heard. I hope they feel that the administration is listening and wants to hear what they have to say. And I hope they come into it with an open mind and really learn from one another and build a sense of community.
Okay, Selena, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to our Journalist Roundtable, keeping the focus on Tucson's election and the other big decision voters will weigh, the Sanctuary City Initiative. The Tucson Sentinel covering this very closely. It will be on the ballot. What will the voters want, though?
That really remains to be seen, and amongst a certain segment, and especially amongst maybe liberal left-wing Democrats, it would be pretty popular, even though none of our elected officials have been supportive of it. Nobody running for office at all right now that we're past the primary, has been supporting that initiative. So will they go against the people that they're voting for and vote yes? It's kind of the open question. And I think a lot of it depends on whether a really organized no campaign gets rolling, and we will probably see that because it's the business community, and for the most part, that seems to be opposed. So they can write some checks.
Yeah. I think it'll be there will be a core group of folks who really believe that this is the way to go, and then there will be other people, I think, who think yes, this is something on that surface level I agree with. And then there will be other people who, like with some previous initiatives, we agree with the idea, but the way it's done, the language of the actual initiative is something that will keep people from voting for it. But I have no doubt that the Republicans will mount a huge campaign about this because it is such a good red meat talking point for the GOP. And I think it probably will fail, but I also can see it winning with people voting for it on the idea of it without really getting into understanding why this particular initiative is not a good idea.
Jim, will we get voters coming out of the woodworks to cast their ballot for it?
No, I think what you have is the debate on one side is going to be the Trump administration is locking people up, and we need to put a stop to it here in the city of Tucson and send a message that we are a sanctuary city, that people can be free and safe together here. On the other side, you're going to have people saying, number one, that the Tucson Police Department already observes many of these things. They've gone as far as they can under what's left of SB 1070 in terms of their general orders and whatnot. And also, it's going to paint a target on Tucson's back, essentially, that the state legislature is going to come after us if we do this, the Trump administration is going to come after if we do this, we're going to lose grants, et cetera, et cetera. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, you already see, as Dylan pointed out, the council, the mayor are all opposed to this. You've got the Democratic Party in favor of it, so you have a little bit of a split within the Democrats in terms of this. And if you can't get all the Democrats on your side, the Republicans are not going to vote for this. And I think most independents are going to look at it and say no. So it's going to be a tough battle. We'll see how much money each side can raise. The Green Shirt Guy, hashtag Green Shirt Guy, has helped them raise some money initially with that thing that went viral, but we'll see how much money the opposition raises, and I do suspect it'll be a significant amount of money, and they'll be able to raise enough doubts.
Sarah, this week Regina Romero told me that she will defend the will of the voters, and if that means they support the sanctuary city movement, then that's what she'll defend.
I think politically, yes, that would be difficult for her to kind of maneuver that. But if it's something that the voters want, then the council has to uphold it. And I don't think that politically there would be a lot of risk to her in doing that once she's in office.
All right, before we go, we have a number of people throwing their name in the hat for some congressional races, but also one from the past, Joe Arpaio. He wants to come back. Is this for real?
Well, that's, I think, always the question about Joe Arpaio. Is this for real? But the idea that he's, what, in his 90s now? 80s?
Late 80s. I think he's 87.
113.
Yeah. So I think this is very
That's
much
the temperature, Dylan.
He doesn't look a day over 113.
right.
All
right. I think that he's the kind of guy that thrives on that. I mean, what else is he going to do? Is he going to macrame? No. Is he going to start having hobbies at this stage in retirement? No. But I also think he is kind of, again, that red meat for galvanizing people, to get the base excited, to kind of be a symbol that is not having to do with him specifically, but his very carefully crafted image. And he loves his adoring public, and some of them love him.
And real quick, to the Senate race, Martha McSally, again, a new contender coming forth this week. Should she be worried?
I think she may run into some situations where she has to tack a little bit to the right in the primary, and that may not be great for her in a general election, but I don't see her being derailed in a primary. Just like I don't see Arpaio making it through the primary in Maricopa County. He lost overwhelmingly last time, and for somebody to put their bet down for him again, I don't see it going on.
All right, Jim?
Democrats are probably delighted that Arpaio is going to run because they figure that'll bring Democrats to the polls. I think that McSally is going to once again be forced to continue to tack to the right and tack towards Trump, because this guy's more Trump than Trump that has jumped into this race. And so that's what hurt her badly last time, was the sense that she was not going to be an independent. So I think all of that accrues towards Mark Kelly.
All right. My thanks to the three of you. We'll have you back again soon. That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. To get in touch, visit us on social media or send an email to arizona360@azpm.org. We'll see you next week.